Now Thomas is as happy as can be. He has a branch line and 2 coaches called Annie and Clarabel. Quite often and tell him the news. And Thomas always whistles beep, beep in return. "Hello, James," said Thomas. "I don't know what Sir Topham Hatt would do without me to run this branch line." And he puffed off importantly. Branch line. He thinks it is the most important part of the whole railway. His 2 coaches, Annie and Clarabel, agree with him. Annie can only take passengers, but Clarabel can take passengers, baggage, and the conductor. They are both old and need new paint, but Thomas loves them very much. As they run backwards and forwards along the line, they sing songs to each other. When Thomas starts from a station, he sings, "Oh, come along, we're rather late. Oh, come along, we're rather late." And the coaches sing, "We're coming along, we're coming along." And they know, too, that if Thomas is cross, he's not cross with them. "Rubbish," said Thomas. "You're too slow." The conductor blew his whistle, and Thomas started so quickly that he left him behind. Come along, puffed Thomas. But Clarabel didn't want to come. "I've lost my nice conductor. I've lost my nice conductor," she sobbed. Annie tried to tell Thomas what had happened. "We haven't a conductor. We haven't a conductor." Annie and Clarabel tried to put on their brakes, but they couldn't without the conductor. "Where is our conductor? Where is our conductor?" they cried. But Thomas didn't stop till they came to a signal. "We've left him behind," sobbed Annie and Clarabel together. Everyone looked. And there he was, running as fast as he could along the line with his flags in one hand and his whistle in the other. He was very hot, so he had a drink. Let's make up for lost time. Annie and Clarabel were so pleased to have their conductor again that they sang "As fast as you like, as fast as you like" to Thomas all the way. As he rumbled over the bridge, he would see people fishing. Today, he stopped as usual to take in water at the station by the river. "Bother," said Thomas. "I'm thirsty." They found a bucket and some rope and went to the bridge. Then the driver let the bucket down to the water. The bucket was old and had 5 holes, so they had to fill it, pull it up, and empty it into Thomas's tank as quickly as they could. "That's good," puffed Thomas, and Annie and Clarabel ran happily behind. Suddenly, Thomas began to feel a pain in his boiler. They damped down his fire and struggled on. "I've got such a pain! I've got such a pain!" Thomas hissed. They stopped just outside the last station, uncoupled Annie and Clarabel, and ran Thomas, who was still hissing fit to burst, on a siding right out of the way. "But fish don't suit you, Thomas, so you mustn't do it again." "No, sir, I won't," said Thomas sadly. "Engines don't go fishing. It's too uncomfortable." Changing from yellow stubble to brown earth, and a tractor was hard at work as Thomas puffed along. Later, Thomas saw the tractor close by. "Hello," said the tractor. "I'm Terence. I'm plowing." "I'm Thomas. I'm pulling a train," said Terence. "I can go anywhere. I don't need rails." "I don't want to go anywhere," said Thomas. "I like my rails, thank you." Winter came with dark clouds full of snow. I don't like it, said Thomas's driver, confident. They finished their journey safely, but by now You'll need your snowplow for the next journey, Thomas, said his driver. Puh! Snow is silly, soft stuff. The snowplow was heavy and uncomfortable and made Thomas. Current firemen came early and worked hard to mend the snowplow, but they couldn't make it fit. Thomas was pleased. I shan't have to wear it. I shan't have to wear it, he puffed to Annie and Clarabel. But they were rather worried. I hope it's all right. I hope it's all right, they whispered to each other. It's not bad here, he said to the fireman, but it's sure to be deep in the valley. Silly, soft stuff, puffed Thomas. I didn't need that stupid old thing yesterday, and I shan't today. Snow can't stop me. Cinders and ashes, said Thomas. I'm stuck. The conductor went back for help. And then, who should come to Thomas's rescue but Terence? He pulled the empty coaches away, then came back for... Oh, thank you, Terence. Your caterpillars are splendid, said Thomas. I hope you'll be sensible now, Thomas, said his driver. I'll try, said Thomas, and he puffed slowly away. Thomas was waiting at a junction when a bus arrived. I took your passengers, and Terence the tractor pulled you out. I've come to help you with your passengers today. Help me, said Thomas. I can go faster than you. The station master said, Are you ready? Go! Thomas never could go fast at first, and Bertie drew in front. Why don't you go fast? Why don't you go fast? Called Annie and Clarabel. He's a long way ahead, they wailed. But Thomas didn't mind. He'd remembered the level crossing. Fuming at the gates while they sailed gaily through. Goodbye, Bertie, called Thomas. After that, the road left the railway so they couldn't see Bertie. Then they had to stop at the station to let off passengers. Quickly, please, called Thomas, and off they went again. Come along, sang Thomas. We're coming along, sang Annie and Clarabel. Hurry, 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 Bertie tooting triumphantly on his horn. Oh, dearie me, groaned Thomas. Steady, Thomas, said his driver. We'll beat Bertie yet. We'll beat Bertie yet. We'll beat Bertie yet, echoed Annie and Clarabel. We'll do it, panted Thomas. But he felt better after a drink. The signal dropped. Hurrah, we're off! Hurrah, we're off! Puffed Thomas. As they crossed the bridge, they heard an impatient honk. Now Thomas reached his full speed. Bertie tried hard. Whistling triumphantly, he plunged into the tunnel. We've done it, hooray! We've done it, hooray! Chanted Annie and Clarabel as they whooshed into the last station. Everyone was there to celebrate Thomas's victory. But they gave Bertie a big welcome, too. Well done, Thomas. They now keep each other very busy. They often talk about their race, but Bertie's passengers don't like being bounced like peas in a frying pan. And Sir Topham Hatt has warned Thomas not to race at dangerous speeds. So although, between you and me, they would like to have another race, I don't think they ever will. Do you? Thomas chuckled and went off with Annie and Clarabel. Hello, called Thomas. Playing tank engines? Sensible engine. Take my advice. Scrap your tender. Take care, hissed Gordon. You might stick to the branch line. Thomas was anxious about Annie and Clarabel, but both driver and conductor promised to take care of them. There were fewer trains, but the passengers didn't mind. They knew the three other engines were... The two coaches were very pleased to see Thomas again. Edward and Percy played with the freight cars. "Stop, stop, stop," screamed the cars as they were pushed into their proper sidings. But the two engines laughed and went on shunting till the cars were tidily arranged. They arrived early at the station. Thomas puffed in. "Where have you been, lazy bones?" asked Henry. "Oh, I can't wait for dawdling tank engines like you. Goodbye." Have you ever seen anything like it? Both Annie and Clarabel agreed that they never had. There's a line to a quarry at the end of Thomas's branch. It goes for some distance along. Early one morning, a large policeman was sitting close to the line. Thomas liked policemen. He had been a great friend of the officer. Thomas expected that the new officer would be friendly too, but he was sorry to see that he didn't look friendly at all. Thomas puffed sadly away. Sir Topham Hatt spoke to the policeman. But however much he argued with him, it was no... At first, Thomas was jealous, but he was so pleased when Toby rang his bell and frightened the policeman. They've been firm friends ever since.
Phew,
Remarked Thomas.
what a funny smell. Can you smell a smell?
"I can't smell a smell." Before Gordon could answer, Thomas puffed away. Annie and Clarabel could hardly believe their ears. "He's dreadfully rude. I feel quite ashamed. I feel quite ashamed. He's dreadfully rude." And to Thomas they said, "You mustn't be rude. You make us ashamed." But Thomas didn't care a bit.
That was funny. That was funny.
He chuckled. He felt very pleased with himself. Annie and Clarabel were deeply shocked. They had great respect for Gordon, the big engine. It was Christmas on the island of Sodor. All the engines were working hard. Thomas and Toby were busy carrying the coaches. Annie and Clarabel were complaining. "It's always the same before Christmas," they groaned. "We feel so full. We feel so full." "Oh, come on," said Thomas. "Where's your festive spirit? Christmas Day is almost here." "Beep, beep. Happy Christmas." Thomas always felt better for seeing her. "And you and Toby gave her presents?" Percy joined in. "And Sir Topham Hatt sent her to the seaside to get better." All the lights went on. What a marvelous sight awaited Mrs. Kindly. Thomas the Tank Engine and his friends thought it was the best Christmas ever, and Mrs. Kindly could think of nowhere she would rather live than here with them on the island of Sodor. It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. Thomas the Tank Engine's blue paint sparkled in the sunshine as he puffed happily along his branch line with... He was feeling very pleased with himself. "Hello, Thomas," whistled Percy. "You look splendid." "Oh, I don't know. I like my brown paint," said Toby. "Blue is the only color for a really useful engine. Everyone knows that." Percy said no more. It took so long to clean Thomas that he wasn't in time for his next train. Toby had to take Annie and Clarabel. "Poor Thomas," whispered Annie to Clarabel. They were most upset. Now Percy has learned his lesson, too. He muttered cheerfully to himself. Later, Thomas brought Annie and Clarabel to visit him. Thomas was most impressed. The coaches were full of children. Trevor gave them rides along the harbor. He liked this best of all. He's very kind, said Annie. He reminds me of Thomas, added Clarabel. He already knew Percy and soon made friends with Toby and Bertie. Terence the tractor gave him a big welcome, too. Duck was very gentle with the coaches. Annie and Clarabel were impressed. Such nice manners, they told each other. It really is a pleasure to go out with him. When Thomas came back, Annie and Clarabel told him how well Duck had managed. Thomas was so pleased to be home. The works had left Thomas's handbrake very stiff. It made his brakes seem as if they were on, when in fact they were not. Result, he and his coaches often overran the platform. Thomas found this most embarrassing. His driver and fireman learned to be extra careful. The fireman had fastened the coupling all about Thomas's handbrake. Thomas simmered happily. Not long now, he thought. He tried to stop, but he couldn't, without his driver and fireman. He tried to whistle a warning, but he couldn't do that either. The conductor, driver, fireman, and passengers were... "Stop! Stop!" shrieked Annie and Clarabel. But Thomas, with plenty of steam, kept on going. The alarm went down the line. At last, Thomas was tiring. "I need to stop! I need to stop!" he panted wearily. As they neared the next station, they entered the platform slowly enough for the inspector to act. Judging his moment, the inspector scrambled into the cab and screwed the brakes on. At last, Thomas stopped. Both he and the inspector were very relieved. Then they thanked Harold. Wearily, Thomas agreed with him. Thomas grew crosser and crosser. "Time's time," he grumbled. "Why should I keep my passengers waiting while Henry and James dawdle about all day on viaducts? Run my train on time, for one thing," retorted Thomas. He hurried away before Henry could answer, as Thomas panted wearily in. One day, James was later than ever at the junction. "I'm sorry, Thomas," he puffed. Before James could answer, he puffed importantly away. Come along, he panted to the coaches. Annie and Clarabel did their best, but Thomas soon found that he couldn't save much time. Suddenly, Thomas saw Bertie ahead. His radiator was steaming. "What's the matter?" asked Thomas. "You should be at the station by now. You're late." "Thank goodness you're late, too. Can you take my passengers, please? They'll never get home otherwise." "Of course," agreed Thomas. Thomas set off again. Already he felt much more cheerful, and Bertie's passengers, traveling in Annie and Clarabel, all reached home safely. Thomas the Tank Engine has worked his branch line for many years and knows it very well. Thomas had become conceited. He didn't realize his driver was joking. Turned out to be Annie, Clarabel, and Henrietta, who were most offended. "We won't stay here to be insulted," they fumed, the night soothing their hurt feelings. Daisy, on the other hand, felt bright and cheerful. "Woo, woo, woo," she tooted as she came out of the yard and back to the station. Next day, Thomas came back. and Percy was sent to be mended. Annie and Clarabel were delighted to see Thomas again, and he took them for a run at once.
Can't stop. Gotta see a coach about a train. Don't be frightened, Thomas, he laughed. It's only me. Your ugly phiz is enough to frighten anyone, said Thomas. Continued Thomas firmly. You crawl like one, too. I don't. Who's been late every afternoon this week? It's the hay. I can't help that, said Thomas. Time's time, and Sir Topham Hatt relies on me to keep it. Everyone was waiting. Thomas seethed impatiently. 10 minutes late. I warned him. Passengers will complain. And Sir Topham Hatt... Then they all saw Percy. They laughed and shouted. Look what's crawled out of the hay, teased Thomas. What's wrong? Asked Percy. Talk about hairy caterpillars, puffed Thomas.
It was 2 days before Christmas. Many children were expected on the island of Sodor. One, two, three! Suddenly, like magic, the station was flooded with light. We won't stay here to be insulted,